You're listening to Investigation Insiders by Integris Intelligence.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. We are excited to be back and recording new episodes. We are getting a lot of inclement weather throughout the country. Hope you are listening to this episode comfortably somewhere. So we're lucky to have a very, very special guest today, Neil Moran. How are you, Neil?
I'm good, Forhad. I'm very good.
I'm really happy to have you on the show. Just for context for everyone listening, Neil and I met many years ago through our mutual friend Bob Joyce, also of the FBI, and we have since discovered many other mutual friends. Neil, perhaps you can start by providing our audience with a high level overview of your career.
Sure. And thank you, folks, for having me. This is a real honor and a privilege. It's very exciting for me to speak to your audience. So back in 1971, I joined the FBI in the New York office. At the time, they were housed on 201 East 69th Street on the Upper East Side. We shared a building with what was then called the New York Telephone Company and Hunter College, which always was very interesting. You walk in the front door, and to the left is Hunter College and the phone company. To the right is the FBI. On more than one occasion, a Hunter College student would wind up on the 10th floor of the FBI, or somebody looking for to pay their phone bill on the 11th floor. So that was always quite a challenge. But in 1975, after working in the office for several years in the clerical program, I got appointed as a special agent and went to the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia for my training. I was one of the rare people at the time that came right back to the New York office. Traditionally, what the FBI had always done up until that point was send you probably someplace to the West Coast, and then if you expressed a desire to get back to New York, they would transfer you someplace to the Midwest, maybe Chicago, Oklahoma City, Minneapolis, some places like that. And then if you still wanted to get back to New York, you never had a problem getting back. But I was one of the rare people at the time that that actually came back to New York. And it's funny, you put down what's known as an office of preference at the time and where you want to go. And I had never really been anywhere. I went to college in upstate New York and had not been in the service. So I really had never left New York. I wanted them to send me anywhere, but that just wasn't in the cards. And as it worked out, it was great to come back to New York and get the trial by fire on some of the biggest cases, in the FBI. So I spent better part of almost 29 years in the New York office. Was assigned to the criminal division for the vast majority of that time, working at 69th Street. When I came back, I was assigned to a general criminal squad. Some of the things that we focused on in that particular squad were bombings. The FALN was quite prominent back in those days. Large terrorist organization. Some Croatian terrorist groups were also at the forefront. I did things like respond to and investigate the bombing of the TWA terminal at LaGuardia Airport. I think that was December 29th, 1975. I think 11 people were killed when a bomb was placed in a locker. Our squad had responsibility for that. Deserters, selective service violators, those are the types of things that were assigned to the new agents. I was occasionally assigned to ride with the bank robbery squad, which was kind of exciting, to bank robbery rover, to respond to bank robberies as they came over the air. Back in March of '78, the Queens FBI office opened, and just coincidentally at that time, 69th Street was closing, and all the people were being transferred down to 26 Federal Plaza. Most of my friends that I had developed in the few years that I worked in Manhattan were transferring to Queens. I was living in the Riverdale section of the Bronx at the time and had gotten married. And so I transferred to Queens and wound up working there for many years. And then in 1993, I think it was 1993, I was transferred to the Undercover and Sensitive Operations Unit headed by Jim Abbott at the time. And that's how I rounded out my career in May of 2000.
And so post the bureau, I mean, it's interesting because you've had equally long of a career, I guess, after leaving the bureau, right? You've done corporate investigative work and things like that.
Actually, 18 years. I worked for the vast majority of those 18 years. I retired in June of 2018. So from May of 2000 to June of 2018, I worked in the private industry. Yes.
Yeah, so you have a lot of stories to tell, which we'll get into as we speak here. But as you're telling the story about the FBI office being housed in the same building as Hunter and the telephone company, and you're saying how people end up, accidentally in the FBI office. Like I've managed people pretty much my whole career, even before I started my professional career, and people will be people sometimes, but I can't help but sort of think like I wonder if someone ended up on the wrong floor to pay like a phone bill, and an FBI employee takes the payment. You know what I mean?
I, those stories, believe me, would spread like wildfire. And it was obviously not a high point for the office, and there would be a big crackdown on security and
Yeah.
who let this person through. Was it an agent? Was it, because generally speaking, the clerical folks were on duty. One, myself included. I did it many times. Sometimes you'd have to come in when the office opened for business at 6 a.m. and you'd be there like at 5:30, quarter to 6, and you'd be standing there, standing post by the revolving doors, and agents would start to come in at an early hour. But
Yeah.
so did people from the phone company. Not so much Hunter College, but so did people from the phone company. So, but generally speaking, there would be an agent in the back sitting, who was called a complaint agent. So it was always, did the clerical person let the bill payer through, or did the agent let who was going to take the weight for that? So it didn't happen all that much, but it did spread like wildfire when it happened.
I got you. So where'd you grow up, and how did you end up becoming an FBI agent?
So born and raised in what's now called the Norwood section of the Bronx, Bainbridge Avenue and East 206th Street. Spent my early years there, and my father actually was a New York City fireman. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, a homemaker. I'm the oldest of four, two sisters and a brother. And at some stage, when I was about to actually graduate from grammar school, as many police officers and firefighters saw the Bronx burning, especially my father saw the Bronx burning to the ground, as Howard Cosell famously said during the World Series one year. We decided, my parents decided to move to neighboring Rockland County. So I spent a number of years up there. Come from a largely civil service family, a lot of police officers and firefighters in the family. And so I always kind of thought that I would gravitate towards either the fire department or the police department. I think a little bit more, even though my dad was a fireman, I think a little bit more from the police. I was just intrigued by the police department, and had several uncles and my father's cousins who were actually some of them at senior levels in the New York City Police Department. So I think I gravitated a little bit more towards that. Actually, as a clerical employee, took the police test and was called and had a decision to make whether to go to the New York City Police Department or stay in the FBI. And collective thinking between my father and family members was stay for a while and see how this works out. And if it doesn't work out, you always have that ace in the hole to leave. So that's kind of how the whole thing got started.
Interesting. Yeah. So what sticks out in your and it sounds like you were involved in quite a bit, but some highlights from your career with the FBI.
Once I got assigned to the Queen's office in March of '78, I was assigned initially at the outset to an organized crime squad, and most of my friends were assigned to the truck hijacking squad, and the truck hijackings were at their height back in the '70s, and true to the movie Goodfellas, where fellas like Jimmy Burke and Tommy DeSimone, played by Robert De Niro, and Joe Pesci and Ray Liotta playing Henry Hill. We knew all these guys. They were all truck hijackers, and so a lot of the people that were hijacking trucks back in those days in the '70s rose to bigger and better things in the 5 organized crime families. So this is really where you wanted to be. It was such a busy squad that when it was in Manhattan, they had 2 squads, just like the bank robbery squad. They were so busy. Bank robbery squad had 2 squads, and the truck hijacking squad had. So these were the real prestigious squads to be in the New York office. And I mean, I really, especially because my friends were on it, I really wanted to get to that squad. So I did my time over in organized crime for a while, and was moved over to the truck hijacking squad and headed by Steve Carbone. And we were busy bees, 6 and 7 days a week, 24/7. Wouldn't have had it. None of us would have had it any other way. Vast majority of the people that we arrested, again, went on to bigger and better careers than hijacking trucks into the 5 families. So that was a great foundation, I think, as a young agent for all of us. And from that, back in the early '80s, as the task force concept came into being with the Joint Bank Robbery Task Force and the Joint Terrorist Task Force under Assistant Director Ken Walton. It was kind of his brainchild, and it went on to be a model in many FBI offices around the country. And to me, it was the best thing that ever happened to the Bureau. No secret, anytime you turn on a Law and Order or Barney Miller or any of the old police shows, the FBI, I have to hold my head in my hands when the FBI comes in, because the FBI dug its own hole. They weren't very cooperative with local police, and the hierarchy of the FBI at the time was very mistrustful of police departments around the country, viewing them as corrupt. And it was a bad stain and a bad way to walk into a precinct for 2 FBI agents that would get their chops busted immediately. They were going there, it happened to me many, many times. You'd walk into a precinct, the FBI's here, So the task force concept was introduced, and I had an opportunity to get on the Joint Auto Larceny Task Force, which Steve Carbone headed, and we had New York City detectives assigned to our office in the Brooklyn, Queens office. And to me, it was, instead of going into a precinct with an agent, now you were partnered with a detective. It was absolutely, I thought it was just great stuff. And you were able to cut through a lot of red tape, so to speak. So with that, back in 1983, 84, a detective on our squad, George Terra, gets introduced to someone who's interested in cooperating, who had a truck repair shop on Atlantic Avenue in the Richmond Hill section of Queens. And what he told George was that people were giving him insurance jobs to chop up their cars to the tune of 5 to 6 a week. And at first, George thought it was like 5 or 6 a month. When he heard 5 or 6 a week, he couldn't believe it. So what Sergeant Torrance, Jim Torrance, the police department supervisor, and Steve Carbone and some of the more experienced people on the squad, what they came up with was to form an undercover operation where an agent, detective, or two agents, and it turned out to be George Hanna and myself acted as undercover chop shop people. The informant gave us his place of business, which was housed in the East New York section of Brooklyn, at the corner of Liberty and Montauk. It was a junkyard. It had everything in there that you would expect to see in a junkyard: windshields, doors, engines, shells of cars. It was a working junkyard. And so that was actually great cover. And the Bureau came in. We had a trailer there. The technical people came in and wired it for sound and for video. And we transacted a lot of business there. The informant, we actually, prior to leasing a flatbed truck, we had a police department tow truck with the decals scraped off, which didn't go over too big with a lot of the people that we were introduced to in the beginning. But we overcame it, and then after a while, we actually leased a flatbed from a car dealership, and that made things a lot easier. So that actually, the undercover case, and then spin-offs of that undercover case with informants and organized crime led us into another sizable investigation with a cooperator several years later, which got us involved in a number of organized crime homicides, the burial of a young woman in Staten Island and the unearthing of her body, and also led to the Mafia Cops case indirectly. And it just, so those to me, those are some of the highlights of some of my best memories of working all the years in the Bureau.
Yeah, that's a lot. So, and I'm sure you're just touching a little bit of your experiences. So, it's interesting when I asked you earlier about providing an overview of your career. I thought it was interesting that you talked about the FBI and stopped there, even though you've had, 18 years outside of the FBI, right? So just goes to show how much you loved being an FBI agent. But I imagine that you've had some good experiences in the private sector as well, right? Tell us a little bit about what you've enjoyed most about the private sector.
So, full disclosure, like many of us, what did we know about I never took a business course in college. I never worked a white collar crime case in the FBI. I didn't know anything about the business world. So retired agent calls me. I'm now the supervisor of the Undercover and Sensitive Operations Unit. I'm traveling around the country. I'm traveling around Europe, speaking at meetings, going down to Quantico on a regular basis. I never went anywhere when I worked truck hijackings. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in London at a police college, talking about the FBI's undercover program like I'm some big shot. And it was great. I was having the time of my life. I get this call from a retired agent, and I had just turned 50 in December. And I would say this call probably came in about March after my birthday, after my 50th birthday. And he said, somebody told me you're eligible. And I said, I am. So he says, have you thought about, do you have a resume together? I said, no. I said, I don't envision myself leaving. I said, I'm really enjoying my job. I said, this is really, I'm never in one place at the same time. I said, we're doing so many tremendous things for the undercover program. Why would I want to leave? So he says, do you have anybody in college? I said, yeah, actually two. He said, I'm sure it's easy to pay the bills, right? So I said, well, no, actually it's not. He says, let me ask you a question. Did anybody ever tell you that you can actually collect your pension and earn a salary at the same time? Are you aware of that? And I have to say a light bulb went off. And, I said, gee, I mean, I'm obviously I can add 2 and 2. I know that's the case, but I guess I'm enjoying myself so much. He said, an opportunity has come across my desk with a small company run by 2 retired agents. They're looking for somebody like you. I know you, and I'm in a position where I can put in a good word. He said, why don't you put a resume together and send it to me this weekend. So I called a couple of friends. I got copies of their resumes. My heart, Forhad, Josephine, my heart was not in it. I just said, I was placating this guy more or less. So I put a resume together, and all of a sudden, one of the retired agents from the company reaches out to me, and I'm meeting him. And in a couple of months, in May of 2000, I'm gone. And it was a big deal. It was traumatic to leave the FBI. Was I doing the right thing? There's no coming back. This is not like the police department where you can take terminal leave at the end and like one of my uncles did and come back after 6 months. You're gone. That's it. Yep. It's a huge decision. It's a huge career decision. Again, I had children in college.
Yep.
At this stage, I'm just trying to think. I think my wife got her nursing degree late. And yeah, she had her degree by now, so she was working. But it was a very, very big decision. So I worked for about 2 years with the company, did some insurance fraud. They had a contract with, I think it was Avis, investigating staged automobile accidents. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
I didn't have, the thing that I missed was the office atmosphere and the collegiality of an office atmosphere. I missed that. A lot of people would say, "Gee, you're on your own. They provided a car for you," but I wasn't. I missed the office atmosphere. I really did. I worked a bank fraud case for the company where I went to Puerto Rico and met with a fella from Aon who did the case with me. He was a commercial broker of insurance for Aon. And about 2 years in with this firm, he said to me, something's come to my attention. The accounting firm BDO Seidman at the time, now BDO USA, they're looking for somebody like you. They just had a former postal inspector who was part of their consultancy group that is taking a job with a big firm. And they're looking for somebody like you. I said, an accounting firm? You have to be kidding, John. Not only do I not know anything about the business world, I don't know anything about the accounting. They're not looking for that. They're not looking for that. They're looking for somebody. They're looking for your Rolodex, things like that. You don't realize working 29 years in the New York FBI office, you know how to get things done. You know how to make phone calls. I didn't realize any of this. So a couple of months later, in December of 2002, I started with BDO and was part of their consulting group. And I have to say, again, a little apprehensive at the beginning. The first week I'm there, again, my friend John at Aon calls me and said, I need you to come over to our office tomorrow with somebody in a decision-making capacity, probably a partner. He says, been a $13.2 million misappropriation case for one of our clients in the Netherlands. And they're coming over here. They're on their way over here. There's a meeting tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I've already sent them your resume and recommended BDO. You just need to show up here and do a meet and greet with them, and we'll see how this goes. So I go into my boss. And I tell him this. He's aghast. I was there a couple of days, and all of a sudden we have an opportunity to investigate a $13 million misappropriation case. The new guy has delivered all of a sudden. And I was, again, you're an ex-government employee. How are you going to fit in here? This is a big firm, and I was nervous about it. It's a big step. I wanted to be able to prove myself. And again, just through my friend John, all of a sudden this case is possibly falling in our lap. So the two of us walk over there. I barely know the partner. Okay. He looked at my resume. So he did a great job. He did most of the talking. He did a great job selling us and, our capabilities and everything. And so then he comes around to introducing me. He says, and although Neil's only been with us a short time, he did leave the New York FBI office, a very prestigious career where he was head of the New York office. I thought I would fall out of my chair. Head of the New York office. I was a supervisor. He has me supervising thousands of agents. So anyway, my friend John looks at me like just with a smirk, and then after the meeting's over and the partner is chatting with the Dutch folks, my friend says to me, "It's a big promotion here, huh?" So anyway, as we're leaving, I said to the partner, I said, "What are you doing?" I said, I was a supervisor. I was in charge of about 12 people, maybe. Responsibility for 12 people. To be an assistant director in charge of the New York office, I mean, that's a huge responsibility. So, oh no, that's fine. They didn't even bat an eyelash. He said, "I'll know next time to tone it down a little bit." Anyway, I was introduced to a conflict check. He says, "Listen, when you get back to the office, do a conflict check." What's a conflict check? Knock on somebody's door and they'll ask you and they'll help you put it together. So it took me about 2 hours to put a conflict check together. For your listeners, a conflict check, firm-wide check on all the BDO offices to find out whether or not we have a relationship with this company. Are we their auditors? Do we do their taxes? What kind of do we have a relationship? Goes to all BDO's international offices as well as its domestic offices. Well, conflict checks almost are just a pro forma thing, and they always seem to work out. This one didn't.
Oh,
we had a relationship with this company. I thought the people at BDO, they were just aghast. First of all, they're so excited the possibility of what a $13.2 million loss is going to generate in fees, and all of a sudden that goes completely out the window. So it was a nice start, but a little bit of a cloudy start because of the conflict check. So these are some of the things I learned in the first week I was on board. But you know what? It didn't take long for me to realize this is actually the type of place where I want to be. Lots of young people, very enthusiastic, all smart as whips. We had a very nice relationship with the Stern School of Business at NYU. And a little bit about how this worked was if Josephine and Forhad are juniors at NYU and your classes are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from noon until 6, you spent those mornings at BDO working those 4 hours from 8 to 12, and then hopped on the subway down to West 4th Street and went to your class at 1 o'clock down at. So it was, these young people were, you talk about enthusiastic, they couldn't wait to get their teeth into things like this and get some experience. So I was surrounded by very, very smart young people, none of them above the age of 25. And I really enjoyed the heck out of working with people like this. So I said to myself early on, this is actually really where I want to be. One of the cases that I got assigned kind of out of the box was somebody had dropped a dime on the chief financial officer of a company in Pennsylvania. And this company had its headquarters in France. And one of the things that you were entitled to do, there was a lot of back and forth between the company in Pennsylvania and the headquarters in France. One of the things you were allowed to claim per diem on was if you did any business within a 50-mile radius of their headquarters in the European city in France. So what this chief financial officer, making $450,000 a year, did was cheat on things like dry cleaning, where he got something dry clean. So let me back up. What had happened was the company sent us boxes of receipts. So this was like 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. And myself and one of the interns from Stern took over the boardroom for about 3 days and just literally had all these receipts spread out on the table. And this is, we're talking about early of 2002. So I don't think we had a lot of the things computer-wise that we have available to us now to map out a 50-mile radius. So it's a little bit more labor intensive, but this is what we did for the better part of a week. And for somebody making $450,000 a year, we got this guy on about $6,000 or $7,000 of fraud. He was taking trains to here, to there, and he was claiming them, and they were nowhere near the 50-mile radius. So, you know what that told me right away, and as did other cases, was the greed and the sense of entitlement. I had never worked on stuff like this, and I'd say, why would anybody chance a $450,000 salary for $7,000. What
Right.
what a stupid thing to do. And that and the other interesting cases that I worked at BDO, which I'll touch on, that was the biggest thing to me, the sense of entitlement with a lot of people. And it kind of really rubbed me the wrong way, as you'll see, I'll go into more detail. It really did rub me the wrong way. And I just said, how dare they? Like, I mean, it's almost like they took on this air of entitlement is what it was. I'm
Right.
entitled, I'm the boss. And that led into other things, bullying employees, and like they were the king,
Yeah.
and it really, I said to myself, these guys, these guys, they were a lot of them were make believe tough guys. They had the staff intimidated, and people were afraid of their jobs. And this really, I said, these guys think they're tough guys. They don't know what a tough guy's like. The people that I encountered in my career, those are tough guys. And those were some early impressions that I had when I came to BDO. But I knew that I had found a home there. It wasn't. Was it like the FBI? No. Did you have water cooler talk just like you had at the FBI? Of course. But it was nothing like the informality of working with the detectives and the agents and the fun times that we had. But it was one thing I'm leaving out. Who's the new guy? Who's the new FBI guy in the office? So if you remember, I said I joined there in December of '02. The Super Bowl followed fairly quickly after that. I won the big pool. I won like $1,000 in this whole pool weeks after arriving at this place, and nobody even knew who the hell I was. And now all of a sudden I won this big pool. So as you would do when you were in the FBI, listen, this Friday night I'm putting money on the bar at some nearby watering hole that we worked, and everybody was flabbergasted at that. Nobody ever did this before. None of the other partners put money on the bar for anything. What, are you kidding me? So all of a sudden I got some notoriety courtesy of the Super Bowl.
Well, that's awesome. I got to tell you something. Everything that you just went through and have talked about thus far on the episode, I mean, it just we can go on and on about individual things that you're saying, but separate of that, I'm listening to you and I'm listening to just the excitement and enthusiasm that you're exuding. And I think back on working with Mike Hennihan, who I'm sure you know very well,
Sure.
for many years. And one of the things I loved about Mike is that while he was still active and working, everything that he did, it was like his first job out of college. I mean, he showed so much enthusiasm to doing everything. That's, I think, one of the reasons why people loved working with him. I sense the same with you. And, the thing that I would say to people listening to this episode, especially people that are maybe towards the front end of their career, not the back end, is yes, Neil's talking about catching bad guys and, white collar crimes and all that. But really, this is a playbook for being successful at work and in life. So really, I commend you. I can feel the enthusiasm, and I can, I know you're modest about who you are, but I can see why you have such a great reputation. So I just wanted to say that before we moved on.
Very, very kind. Thank you so much. Just like Mike, just like many of my colleagues,
Yep.
Forhad, the senior management of the New York FBI office was littered with stories about, again, we're talking like SAC level, ASAC level, the hierarchy, the senior level of people in the bureau, taking big jobs and being complete flops because they thought they could do was just show up. And I think that things like that really resonate with the folks that I worked with. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of calls. I was one of the first ones of our group to leave, all my colleagues. First week, I'm getting calls. How is it? How is it? And everybody wanted to know, how are you doing? Is it, is this something I should think about doing? So it was a big testing ground, but I knew I had to prove myself to these people. I had to stay later. I had to keep my sleeves rolled up, just like I always did. I surrounded with myself with the people, or I was surrounded with people that always raised their hand at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon when people wanted to get out of there and said, we need people to go out to Brooklyn for something. Just you could wind up not getting home till tomorrow morning. This is why I came into the job, to do stuff like that. So I always whether it was BDO or FBI, I behaved the same. My work ethic didn't change one iota. Even more, I remember my wife and my daughters saying to me, "Dad, you retired. Like, what is going on here? Your hours are terrible." So I've always enjoyed. I am one of the very, very fortunate people throughout their lives that made career choices that I was happy to go to work. And I know a lot of people can't say that. I am truly, truly blessed in my career choices, and it could have easily gone another way. But I'm very fortunate and very grateful. I still am thankful every day because I had fun. I viewed this as fun. Myself and other people that I worked with, we never took ourselves too seriously. We always could have a good laugh, keep things light. And I really enjoyed what I did. So
yeah, no, that shows. And I have a feeling you could have been doing anything and you would have taken the same route. But um, that's probably more you than the jobs and the circumstances. But so, uh, you know, let's dive into the topic of the show, right? Which is many of our listeners hold jobs at different corporations, small to mid-sized businesses, and nonprofits, all sorts of organizations. And you know, there's been a number of cases throughout the years where fraud in the C-suite, and you've already talked about a little bit about it, has devastated organizations. So one of the things that, just jumping on your experience, was to talk about preventing C-suite fraud, right? So
right.
One of the first questions I was going to ask you about was, how'd you get involved in white collar crime? But it sounds like you actually weren't involved in it until you came into the private sector, right?
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about and I know you alluded to one already, but can you talk about a case in the private sector that you worked on, which really helps to demonstrate how devastating fraud can be at the highest levels of an organization?
Yeah, sure. I actually have a few of them, and if I do, my wife always says, "Get to the point, will you please?" So if I drone on too much, please, I'm not going to be embarrassed if you cut me off. But one of the first sizable cases that I had was a construction and maintenance company in Queens had a bookkeeper that was later described by the employees as running the place like Joseph Stalin.
Mm.
And this is not the type of a situation, that you want to have. We if I can digress for a minute, we at one point, as kind of like a sales pitch, we had a group of us at BDO that went out to companies. Our partners would make appointments with different firms they had relationships with, and we had kind of like an anti-fraud. I forget what the acronym was that we used, trying to sell an anti-fraud program to companies. And you know what? Most people feel, unfortunately, this ain't ever going to happen to us because we are a good company. We have good employees. Nobody ever thinks it's going to happen to them until it happens. Right. So nobody wants to spend money on preventive maintenance. They just don't. Very, very few. So this was a company, what I'm about to describe to you, that should have. But small company, okay, not a huge conglomerate, probably with people out in the field and people in the office, probably maybe 150 people. So we're not talking thousands here, but she was in charge. She was the bookkeeper. Single woman from Astoria, lived with her mother, came across their radar. She came in for an interview. They hired her. No background check done on her. So, I mean, from the get-go, you know that's an issue. And I'll touch on what happened, what they found out, what we found out later. So my boss calls me into the office, says a neighbor of his is a minority, 49% minority owner in this company, and they feel they've been victimized to the tune of $5 million. And they're not sure, what the root of the problem is, but their accountant, their outside accountant, who was a personal friend, a golf buddy of the majority owner, second problem, has found some irregularities with the books. So no internal controls in this place whatsoever, no segregation of duties. This woman never took time off. Payroll was due, I believe, on Friday. When she wanted to go someplace with her boyfriend, everybody had to get payroll in by Thursday. They didn't have any second person who was cross-trained, something that always annoyed me when I went to the undercover unit and we had a lot of dealings with FBI headquarters, that you would call down there and, Josephine's on vacation for 2 weeks. She'll get back to you. Well, how about anybody else? I mean, we're supposed to just tread water for 2 weeks, no cross-training, and then they just hang up on you. So it was the same with this place. She was the end all, everything stopped with her. Joseph Stalin. That's the way she was running the place. So what she was doing was taking former employees. Josephine's worked there for 2 years. She continued Josephine on the payroll and switched the bank account from her old bank account to her bank account, the bookkeeper's banking account, and paid her expenses. She would do this with a series of employees. She was getting $15,000, $20,000 in expenses a month. And what she was, and so the fact that she was getting expenses, wasn't showing up anyplace. So, but it should have been caught by the outside accountant. But one of the things that she was doing, she was playing lotto to the tune of $5,000 a week. She went to one place in Woodside, which I interviewed the owner, and she literally would go in there and he would run the tickets off, spending $5,000 in lotto tickets, and she won a couple of times. She won $75,000, and people in the office thought, "Oh my gosh, she's really lucky." They just figured she's playing once or twice to play. So she won 2 or 3 times for big money, 75 for one, 50 for another, let's say 35 for another, and they just figured she was lucky. So what was she spending some of this money on? Trips to Atlantic City, gambling sprees, getting facials and getting her hair done, where she'd be tipping more than the actual charge for the service. Big sports person, tickets to the World Series in field boxes, traveling to different cities, tickets to the NBA All-Star game, sitting courtside. I wish I had all the different things that she was spending money on, but buying buying her favorite niece a brand new Mercedes-Benz for $60,000, starting bank accounts for all her nieces and nephews, $40,000, $50,000 in each account. And again, no internal controls whatsoever. So what happened was my boss's neighbor came to him and says, "Is there anything that can be done? We've approached the Queen's DA's office and we haven't had any luck." As luck would have it, I did know somebody in the Queen's DA's office. I made a call. 2 days later, we had the Economic Crimes Bureau chief on the phone, who assigned an ADA to the case and worked with us. And what we came to find was that among other things, that not doing at the time, I think it was $50 to do a Office of Court Administration background check on this woman. She had left her, had been fired from her prior company after she misappropriated $100,000 from her prior company. She had been prosecuted by the Queens DA and had been assigned to spend 26, had been sentenced rather to spend 26 weekends in jail. So what she admitted to us later was when she got the job at the company that we're in question that we're talking about, she was actually spending weekends at the Queen's house. So what she would do is on Monday morning when she got out, she'd put a blouse and a skirt on, throw water on her face, take the subway into Long Island City and start her job. And then on Friday night, she'd take the subway back out to the Queen's house and spend the weekend in jail. And I mean, that really is a phenomenal story. When we would tell that to companies, people were open-mouthed that she was keeping the book. She told us later during, when we interviewed her that she knew as soon as she walked into the company that she would just have to bide her time, and she knew it was ripe for the taking, that she would be able to, get her way there, and which she wound up embezzling $5 million, which is flabbergasting. And then when we went to interview the accountant, the house accountant, who again was a golf buddy of the boss, we tracked him down at, of all places, Wingfoot Country Club in Mamaroneck. And we interviewed him in the locker room. He didn't have a whole lot of time for us, which we could never prove that he was involved or anything, and really don't think he was just asleep at the switch. And it's a good lesson that you don't want to have a friend being being your looking after the books. There were no segregation of duties at this company. There were no surprise audits at this. There were no audits, period. There were no surprise audits. There was no cross training. There was no training whatsoever. There was no mandatory leave policy where you need to take 2 weeks off and have somebody else come in and run things to make sure everything is running smooth. None of that. This place was being run like a mom and pop shop. And unfortunately, this is what happened. It didn't destroy the company, but it's certainly a loss. How over the course of several years they didn't see $5 million missing is still a mystery to all of us. But at the end, the Queens DA, got involved here, and of course, the Mercedes had to be given up. The bank accounts to the families were all depleted, and big restitution. She was sentenced to, I think it was like 5 to 7 or something, and then ordered deported. She was a Sicilian native, and she was going to be deported to Sicily. So that's wow. That was your classic over the course of many of those things that I mentioned: segregation of duties and mandatory leave, and of course, do your due diligence. How you could not do she fit the profile. She was a middle-aged, very nice woman, very presentable, lived with her mother. Why would you want to do a criminal check on her? They thought. So that goes to show you some of the pitfalls that you can fall into by not doing the things that you're not dotting your I's and not crossing your T's.
Yeah, that's it's such a simple and complicated story, right? And so, the idea of doing background checks and your due diligence to ensure that the person in place is not doing these types of things, the checks and balances and all. I mean, all of those things seem like simple, obvious things, but I guess what you said earlier about people falling into the pitfall of this could never happen to us, or it's more common than we'd like to think. So just to kind of round out this portion of the conversation, if you had to just reel off a few things for companies to prevent becoming a victim, what are the most important things and that you would tell
them? Once again, I mean, don't even think about not doing a background check, which would include other things besides a criminal check.
Right.
You know, you would want to do media. You would want to find out, what kind of person am I hiring here? Are they going to be a cancer to my organization? It doesn't necessarily have to be something of a criminal nature. Do you want to get involved with somebody that has a checkered past? Uh, we Part of what I did at BDO at some stage, when George Hanna went over to Major League Baseball, we began doing background checks for Major League Baseball. And one of the things that general counsel told me when I met with them and sat down was, we don't want to read about ourselves on the back page of the New York Post. So what we were doing was doing background checks and reports on people that applied for a minority ownership interest in a Major League Baseball team. Yankees, George Steinbrenner wants to sell 20% of the team at the time, and Josephine and Forhad want to each buy 5%. We do a really exhaustive background with, a 25, 30-page report on each of you. So even though you weren't convicted of murder or anything, there's loads of things in there that might prevent a company from wanting to hire you, a place like MLB. So that's first and foremost. But some of the other things that I touched on, segregation of duties. This woman was running the place. She had everybody intimidated. Get the payroll in. I'm going away for the weekend here. Instead of the company saying, no, we have Josephine who's gonna fill in for you on Friday, and she'll be in charge of getting the payroll done. So this is the way this place ran. So training, there's no training in a place like this. It's those are some of the things that that come to mind that needed to be done, which were not done.
Sure. No, absolutely. So to kind of change topics here, you recently published a book called Stories, and I can see I understand the name much better now. Can you talk about what the inspiration for the book is, and who do you think would enjoy reading it, and talk about it a little bit?
So when I retired in June of 18, I thought I might like to do some writing. All of a sudden, after 48 years of working, I had the time to think back on my life and how I got where I was. And it were things that I just never, I mean, the two of you have been working your whole lives. How many times have you sat down and wanted to memorialize things that happened to you as a child, and the people that had great influence on your lives? I know I didn't, until I sat down. I said, I'd like to memorialize this. I'd like to start writing this down in some form. So I said, maybe I should take a writing class. So I literally Googled creative writing classes near me, and I came up with a teacher at a local college. And I didn't want to take a credited course, but she had an email address, and I decided to email her. And it was the middle of the summer. I didn't expect her to get back to me right away. Within hours, she said, coincidentally, I run a creative writing workshop twice a month at two local libraries. And matter of fact, this Wednesday we have one, and you're welcome to come. So I began going to the writing class, very intimidated when I walked in there. A lot of published authors, published poets. People write about all types of things, funny things, sad things, tributes to loved ones, beautiful poetry. I felt very, very intimidated, but I started to talk about things that I never talked about before, my childhood. And I was a little reluctant at first to talk about the FBI, but as time went on, I did feel a bit more comfortable trying to focus on some of the funnier things that happened. So all of a sudden I began to write, and it started to become well received. And then I thought I might like to write at their urging, my class's urging, a novel, a murder mystery. So I sat down and started to write this murder mystery about an FBI agent who was born in Ireland. The family came over here. Father was a New York City fireman and got killed in a fire. One day, as the agent is running through Van Cortlandt Park, he comes across a body, and I got about 40,000 words in, and I said to myself, boy, this is not what it's cracked up to be. This is pretty easy. And then all of a sudden, it was like the 18-mile mark of a marathon. If anybody in your audience has ever run a marathon knows that's when you hit the wall. I hit the wall, and I really concerned me. I couldn't put another thought in my head. So I went to my teacher, and she said, well, what about compiling some of the things you've talked about in class as a memoir? I'm telling you that there might be, both the personal ones and the professional ones. You know how the class reacts when you tell your stories. They all enjoy them. So why not put those together? So at her urging and then the class's urging, that's exactly what I did. So I have a lot of personal things in there about family, my grandparents' immigration from Ireland. I go to Ireland every year. I have a lot of family there. Some of the funny stories that I've had there and funny experiences I've had through the years there. And then a lot of the professional things that I've touched on, both at BDO and the FBI, my undercover, very unlikely role as a owner of a junkyard. And then the case I talked about a little bit about the organized crime homicides that we were able to solve. So it comes across a wide spectrum of of personal and professional stories. But I think it's the feedback I've gotten from friends of mine and family that have read it so far is that it's very relatable. It's very relatable, and I think it's an easy read. None of the chapters are all that long. I switch back and forth between personal and professional in the book, and it was a lot of fun putting it together, and really a wonderful experience. And the last couple of weeks since the book's been released, the outpouring of from people I haven't spoken to in years is really very touching. So it's a really at this stage of my life, it's a really fun thing to be doing right now.
Congratulations, Neil. I mean,
thank you so much.
It's well deserved. Thank you for joining me for this episode. It's our first one for the year, so we're excited about getting it out and hearing the feedback, and hopefully helping you get your book out there a little bit more. So thank you so much for joining me today, and best of luck with this.
Thank you so much, and I can't thank you enough for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, me too. And for everyone out there, thanks again for tuning in, for the support. We appreciate everything. Till next time.
Don't forget to follow us. We are on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.